The point of the drunk philosophy is it's supposed to be sprawling. You'll go from this topic to this topic into this topic into this topic, and you go from one thing to another without any real coherent overall structure. It's kind of like, the White Album by the Beatles, just doing all sorts of crazy shit, and it's sprawling and wild.
I hope you recorded this.
Yeah.
So drunk philosophers are like that drunk bitch in the bar who's like, let me tell you about you.
Yeah.
Except we have no shame, but it's not in regard to like dancing stupidly or hooking up or any of the usual no shame things. It's just in regard to having absolutely ridiculous positions on things. It's not the White Album, as you put it. But it was a more interesting question whether or not you thought what consent was a legitimate philosophic topic or discussion.
Yeah.
The ethics of consent. Because I don't think you.
What did you say? You don't think it is?
No, I don't think you think it is.
Why do you think I don't think it is?
Because you're an anti-realist.
Well, but I'm also a non-cognitivist, and I don't really have a problem with doing moral theory. I'm perfectly happy to say, and you also know this about me, right? You know that I'm fairly pluralistic, let's say, about, or at least maybe I should say diplomatic about what counts as philosophy, and I'm kind of happy to just say, yeah, all right, fine, that's philosophy. You've seen me talk to other people and express this kind of diplomacy.
Do you think the issue of the ethics of consent is an interesting philosophic foray or topic, as it were?
Yeah.
You did. I'm over it. I'm totally over it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting enough, and I'd say it counts as philosophy just insofar as I'm happy to accept that the ethics counts as philosophy, even though of course I am an anti-realist about this stuff. How
are you going to do anything rigorous about that?
Because
it's just like this assertion that consent is important.
Well, okay, because how can you do anything rigorous about ethics in general, or how can you?
I don't know that you can.
So I would just say that in ethics you can not still,
in ethics, in philosophy.
Well, in ethics specifically, since that's what we're talking about, you can still give logical arguments. You can still engage in conceptual analysis of the central terms. And as for the notion of consent specifically, I mean, there are questions about it that I find to be quite interesting. There are challenges. So, did you say such as?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to give an example. So,
well, son of a bitch.
Yeah, for example, there seem to be a lot of cases where intuitively consent can be undermined by deception, for instance. Let me think of I'm trying to think of a plausible case, and I'm not coming up with a plausible case. So I'm going to have to just give a more outlandish case.
I came up with a new beer.
So if a woman agrees to have sex with a guy, but I don't know, maybe a situation where what? Where
your struggle. Okay.
I'm trying to just come up with a case that's not completely outlandish, and there are cases that aren't completely outlandish. But if a guy pretends to be somebody he isn't, and then goes into a dark room.
I think I might have a real case that works for you.
Well, so there was a case I remember of a doctor who
this Arab man who claimed to be Jewish and had sex with a Jewish woman in Israel.
That doesn't work for me, because that.
Oh, okay.
No. See, now this is the sort of thing I was about to come on to. So,
or he might have just not said he wasn't Jewish. I can't really remember.
So the thing is that it seems to me that somebody lying about their ethnicity or about their religion is not the kind of lie that undermines consent. There are some lies.
Oh, I thought that's what you were looking for.
No, actually. I was looking for an uncontroversial case of where a lie does undermine consent, of where somebody uses deception in such a way.
Oh, like not having an STD, I think would be a great example of that.
Yeah, that is a good example. Although there's a harm there, which makes it a bit more tricky. I'm trying to find. So, for instance, maybe somebody pretends. So somebody is a doctor, let's say, and like says that he's using some sort of instrument to enter the vagina, but actually puts his dick in there, right? That's the only case that's coming to mind, which is, it seems obvious that the woman hasn't consented. At least that's the intuitive reaction. And it looks like he's acquired her agreement through deception, and it's the deception that's undermined consent. But on the other end of it, there are cases like somebody pretending to have, I don't know, more income than they actually do. Do you want to say that that undermines consent? Does just any lie at all undermine consent? Well, that would be absurd, right? People lie all the time about all sorts of things. And so that strikes me as an interesting case of, you know, where are we drawing the line, and what are the grounds for the line that we're drawing? And I think you can do interesting philosophy there, even if you are an anti-realist about this stuff. You can still ask what people's reasons are for drawing the line where they do. You're not talking about
rightness or wrongness, you're talking about consent.
Yeah, but it's a question in the ethics of consent, broadly speaking.
Okay, well, thank you for giving ethics back to me to some degree. I appreciate that, because I like doing it. And I think you're probably right. Hey, I mean, that is an interesting question about consent, but like, my immediate reaction is like, well, why does that matter? Or my immediate reaction, if I'm like being really philosophical about it, is not why does consent matter? It's how have we defined consent on the part of the consenting person?
Yeah.
Right. Like what requirements then are necessary for that person to consent? Conventional wisdom would be like they're somewhere between like the ages of like 16 and 18 or older. But they have certain cognitive capacities. They're not like a vegetable.
Yeah.
But like it's still so my problem is it's so amorphous I don't know how we're supposed to have a rigorous discussion of consent when we don't have a clear idea of what is necessary for consent.
Okay, well, I mean, on this point, I completely agree. I think most people's views of this are just totally confused. But that, again, is where you start doing philosophy and you start challenging people. And
don't you just want to say, like, I don't know. So this is in my head right now. My grandmother worked at a mental institution back in like the 70s. So already there's a lot wrong with how this institution conducts itself.
Yeah.
But there was this guy who had been a medical doctor who had suffered an injury, head injury, that disabled him severely. But he was very handsome, and he had been a ladies' man prior to this accident. So now he's a ward of hers, and he kept fucking the other handicapped people there. And this all sorts of hilarity or horror, depending on how you look at it, ensued from this. At one point, they were caught fucking in the median of a freeway. This guy and some young woman who was born with a handicap. She was not able to take care of herself in any capacity, just to give you some idea of how severe it was. But she wanted to fuck, and he wanted to fuck. And it's weird, because if we're evaluating the individual's capacities, it seems like these two handicapped people having sex in the middle of the median did both consent to it, at least from my perspective. But had he not suffered that injury and had just fucked this girl, people would say, like, well, no, he manipulated her, or she didn't consent to that. And it's weird, because we want to ground it in that individual. But then also, like, the circumstances play right? Like, clearly his capacities actually have the ability to limit her capacities. And, like, that's where I start saying, like, I'm not sure that we can be rigorous enough about this, because
Okay, but is that
it's clear why we include and exclude certain things. It's too intuitive. It's
So-
based too much on intuition.
a couple of questions there? First of all, is it the case that we can't be rigorous about this, or is it just that most people aren't being rigorous about this? Because it seems like there's
ethics relies too much on intuition.
right. Well,
To be particularly rigorous.
I mean, that was going to then bring me to the other point, which is I don't think there's really much of an option. You don't really have any options other than resting moral theories on intuitions. Ultimately, that's all there is to appeal to.
That's why I asked
in
if you thought we could legitimately do ethics.
Yes, but here's the thing: I don't object to that, because although intuitions
What is that in
form
that sentence? You don't object to
resting moral theories on intuitions, and the reason is just that, first of all, we're not describing facts in the world, right? We're not trying to describe reality. So I don't think intuitions are like truth tracking. Most intuitions. There are some classes of intuitions that maybe are useful and reliable, but most of the time your intuitions, your feelings, your gut reactions are not going to be reliable about the way the world is. But in the case of morality, that doesn't matter, because we're not even trying to describe the way the world is.
What does matter?
And in addition to this, of course, you can still... So, we often have shared intuitions, but we might disagree about the logical consequences of those intuitions. So when you engage in moral arguments with people, you don't necessarily just have to appeal to your intuitions. You can say, well, look, here are the views that you hold, and can't you see how these views entail what, from your point of view, are problematic consequences? So in the case of consent, for example, a great example of this is how people will defend... one of the standard ways of defending the age of consent, as we have it now, is to appeal to power imbalances. And that's just obviously a bad way of trying to defend the age of consent, because there are so many things that can generate power imbalances that you don't want to say can undermine consent, like if you've got a rich person and a poor person, or if you have somebody who's a member of a minority group with somebody who's a member of the majority group. Like if somebody's in an interracial relationship during apartheid in South Africa, there's a massive power imbalance there, but you don't want to say that that's morally wrong. So that's a good example of how I think there is a utility to these discussions.
Okay, so teasing out contradictions. Yeah, sure.
But there's a problem, because I mean, look, you're an error theorist, and I'm not, right. I'm more of a non-cognitivist. So
Would you stop trying to make me give up error theory? It's not happening.
I'm not trying to make you give it up. I'm just trying to explain that this may be the source of the difference here, is that I'm just much more sympathetic to moralizing and moral language than you are in general.
I don't know how. Well, one, I have to pee, and two, briefly, I don't know how you take these to mean anything other than truth, reality describing claims. Like I can't get past the language problem. Like, I can't get past it. I'm sorry. Maybe you haven't spoken with enough people. I don't know. Maybe philosophers are too in their ivory tower. But, like, when you talk to somebody about, like, what they think is wrong, like, they think that's a fact in reality. They are making that claim. That like, reality contains wrongness, and that is, in fact, wrong. Like, have you ever spoken to somebody who's, like, adamant about wrongness or rightness?
Yeah, I agree that people...
You really think they aren't attempting to describe reality?
No, I think that they may take themselves to be doing that, but that's not the most useful way of interpreting the discourse as a whole and the function of moral discourse and so on. But I'm perfectly happy to accept that yeah, loads of people have the intuition that there are moral facts. Like, obviously, because there are moral realists and there are moral error theorists, and so clearly,
yeah, these people are clearly attempting to describe reality. Yeah. It's so a thing. I did this today when I was recording my lecture for my students, because we were talking about objective and subjective and like factual claims and that sort of thing. There's a section in my textbook, excuse me, on moral realism, and it's like literally one paragraph on moral realism in chapter 1 of this critical thinking textbook. And I usually skip over it because that's an entire class, right? Like, anyway, invariably, a clever student, or just a student who's paying a lot of attention and wants to argue, will be like, I give as the example, as the textbook indicates I should, like, there is life on Mars as an example of an objective claim. Mm-hmm. And then I give as an example of a subjective claim, like chocolate is the best, right? And then I fuck with them a little bit and I'm like, ooh, what sort is I like chocolate? Like, is that objective or subjective? And I kind of use that as a vehicle to talk about these different sorts of claims. And the big difference is that objective claims are true or false, mind independent, right? Right at the very end, I'll leave them with this proposition. And before I was doing it online, I would do this during class with about 15 minutes left. I would say, kicking puppies for no reason is wrong.
Yeah.
What sort of claim is that? And they would like go fucking nuts. They'd be like, oh, Grant, that's objective. Of course. Like, it doesn't matter. We could have a vote and everybody could say that kicking puppies is wrong or is totally right. And it would still be wrong to kick puppies. It's mind independent. So I can't just be like, oh yeah, it's useful to think they're saying something else.
No,
when I know for a fact,
I never said you should think that.
They think that kicking puppies contains wrongness.
I'm happy to accept that there are plenty of people out there who, and maybe that's the majority view, maybe the majority position is that moral claims are attempts to describe facts in the world. So they're purely, descriptive in that, or well, maybe not purely descriptive, but you know what I mean, right? But
propositional, that's the word I was looking for.
But this is the point, right? So the mere fact that somebody takes themselves to be expressing a claim which is true or false doesn't mean that they actually are. And what, you don't agree with that? Because the question is whether or not this is something that is actually true or false. Is this actually a proposition that's being expressed? And if I was to say,
a proposition. If they take themselves to be proposing something, it is a proposition. It's just always false.
So
it's false.
If I was to say, kicking puppies is X, and where X is just undefined, right? Is that true or false? Well,
that's not what they're doing. They have a clear idea of what wrongness
is. This is what's called an analogy, right? Okay, that was a shitty thing to say. I shouldn't have.
You're being a bitch.
Yeah,
you're being a bitch.
But I am making an analogy. I am making an analogy, and the point of the analogy is this: if somebody says the phrase "kicking puppies is X," well, it's obvious to all of us that that's not expressing a proposition, because that's not something that can be true or false, right? So, I mean, I assume we both agree. I don't know. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that kicking puppies is X? That's neither true nor false.
I did not want to do logic when I was drunk. Kicking is X, and you don't mean X as a variable.
Well,
can you use something other than X? Can you use like flobbly fluke or something, if that's what you mean?
Well, if you want to use that, we can. But I think
is that what you mean?
Is better.
X is better.
It's clearly because it's undefined, precisely for that reason, right? There's no question in that case.
If it's just undefined,
and I want to extend it to the case of something like flobbly fluke, like you can replace X with a word, right? And you still don't get a proposition. So this is where I was going.
But right? if you replace it with the word like is like an event, then that is
I
true
agree.
to happen,
Yeah.
right?
So
And
some
that's why I'm
words.
asking whether you want X to be a variable or whether you want it to, like, if you want it undefined, I'm sorry, that no, because that's going to determine, or that's going to be determined once we define it.
Yeah, but what if you just don't define it? What if you just leave it as it is?
That's not what they're doing.
I know it's not what they're doing, but so okay. Here's where I was going with this. I wanted to choose
I
a.
know where we were going.
I wanted to choose a clear and uncontroversial example of a statement that is neither true nor false, and it seems that I maybe failed to choose an uncontroversial example.
Right? Because
But then I was going
it's
to go
not,
to what I was then going to do
it's,
was say, okay, let's replace X with a word, right, such as flobble flocks, right? That doesn't seem to make a difference because the word just isn't properly defined, right?
yeah.
So okay, you've replaced it with a word. You have a sentence which is now like you've got a grammatically correct English sentence, but still you're not expressing a proposition. So what I want to say is that look, whether or not something like kicking puppies is wrong expresses a proposition, that's going to hinge on your analysis of what's going on with the word wrong, right? And you can't just answer all of those questions just by looking at what people think they're doing.
It's the person who is making the claims analysis.
No, I don't think that's not the only thing that you have to consider.
In whether or not a claim is true or false?
Yeah, in whether or not they're expressing a proposition. I don't think that's the only relevant factor. I agree it's a relevant factor, right? I agree that the fact that people take themselves to be doing this is a point against my position, but I don't agree that it's the only relevant factor.
I think it's the only relevant factor for determining whether you should be an error theorist or some other kind of anti-realist.
I would ask people, so, the next question is, all right, well, what exactly do you mean by wrongness? What's really going on when you describe something as wrong? Now, if I say, let's take, I don't know, a claim like the sky is blue. In that case, we can say that that's true or false. And similarly, the sky is red, right? That's true or false. Because in that case, I can see that we have like a model of the world, a model of the way the world is. So in this model, the sky is painted blue, and in this model, the sky is painted red, and so on. Right? And then you're comparing that to the world, and really you're comparing it to another model, but still, the point is you have this kind of correspondence. There's the blueness here and the blueness here, or there's the redness here and the blueness here, and so you've got truth in that case and falsehood in the other case. And so what's the model in the case of wrongness, right? What do you actually, what are you postulating in the world, right? And I can't make sense of that. It's a lot more straightforward. They have
something fucking irreducible.
Well, I think it's a lot more straightforward to see it as a difference in attitude. So what you're doing when you say that kicking puppies is wrong is you have a model of kicking puppies, and you have the attitude towards that this is something not to be done. So it's not a difference in the model; it's a difference in your attitude. And this kind of thing is something that this is a conclusion you draw after analysing what the concept of wrongness is. So
what their concept of wrongness is.
Well, I would say more our concept, because people can use, like, okay, so I should just say, like, for the record, that I've come to view noncognitivism, and actually I've come to view most of my philosophical positions as not as attempts to describe how people are actually using language, but as attempts to explicate concepts. So what I mean by this is, I think that philosophy is in the business of taking concepts which in everyday use are vague and messy and perhaps even incoherent, and then making something out of, like, constructing something precise and coherent out of them. A good example of this would be free will. I think that the way that people use the term free will in everyday speech is probably just incoherent. And the best that you can get out of it is something like compatibilism. But if we're talking about compatibilist free will, we are giving up some of the parts of the everyday concept. Like, I don't think that compatibilist free will is just a pure description of what the everyday concept is. And so I have the same sort of approach to moral concepts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we would disagree in that I think if you interrogate somebody about free will and you ask them, like, okay, so prior events aren't causally related to consequent events or following events. They would say, well, no, of course they're causally related. Like,
Yeah.
obviously. So those things, those choices you make are not made in a vacuum, as it were. Most people would say yes. Whereas when I have interrogated people about their moral claims, they will buckle down on the idea that wrongness is something that exists in the world. And I think that matters. You kept using we in what you said, and I'm a bit drunk. But I made note that you kept using we, and I don't think it's fair at all that you make claims about what we are saying when we make moral claims.
Well, I'm going to carry on doing that because I see it as an explication of our terminology. So,
who is our?
English speakers. Also, my experience.
I'm going to record these little. I was going to be.
My
I'm going to record these students, and. Well, not rude, but anyway, I will record them when I interrogate them about their position on moral properties.
I think,
and you can watch.
It won't surprise me.
Every one of them,
Yeah, I know.
just buckles down that they are claiming this is a thing in reality.
I believe it, but also I think we might have.
Is your we just whoever you decided?
No, we includes them as well, but we also have different experiences with the free will case, because my experience of talking to people about free will is that a hell of a lot of people will just buckle down and say no, right? It has to be in some sense like uncaused. It has to be me that's doing this, right? Where it's like originating from within me.
Yeah, they want like a fucking soulish thing. I know what you're talking about, but they will acknowledge that it would be a choice, would be meaningless if it were based on nothing, that it has to be based on prior states. Every time they'll give that up. Kane, I really have to go to the bathroom.
Okay. Do you want me to like confess 2 secrets to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Secret number 1 is that I actually think you're probably right, and the error theory is the right position. Okay.
Oh, I know. I know.
But you got the reason why I insist on being a non-cognitivist is this. When it was first proposed, AJ Ayer comes along and he's like, morality is just an expression of emotion and that's it. There's no moral truth, no moral facts, no moral properties. This was just a hardcore, proper position. I love that position, right? But then, ever since then, there's been this fucking tsunami of assholes who've come along, and they're like, well, actually, you can have moral truth, even though it's just an expression of that's all you're doing. I mean, you're just expressing emotions, or just expressing plans, but you can still have moral truth, and you can still have moral facts and moral properties. And I hate all of them, and so I insist on being a non-cognitivist who's doing it properly. And so there you are.
That's no different than quasi-realism.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. They try to do this weird... That's the problem, right? They try to be quasi-realist about it. So... And
when I'm talking to you, I think you're wonderful, and I don't want to be like, Kate, this sounds like fucking quasi-realism.
When have I ever sounded like a quasi... I don't think I'm a quasi-realist.
Just now, you sounded like a quasi-realist.
No, because
where you're like, no, we're just not going to worry about what they're actually saying. We're going to worry about what I decided they were saying when I say we.
Yeah, I don't care. Look, I'm no interest in, respecting people's...
This needs to be known.
No, because I don't care about respecting what people think that they're doing when they use moral language, but I definitely care very much about not conceding that there are moral facts and moral truths and moral properties. I'm not having any of that nonsense going on in my non-cognitivist system. So there you have it.
So I'm sorry, but if the question is what are people doing when they express moral propositions, what people are doing in actuality. I'm so angry with you. is making propositional fucking statements.
Well, some of
That's
them
what
are.
they're doing.
Some of
That
them
is
are, but I don't
the
care.
vast majority of
Well,
them.
some of them are, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they think they're doing.
You can't. It doesn't matter what they think they're doing as an answer to the question, what do they think they're doing?
It's the wrong question.
It's that's the as asked, sir. You said earlier that the problem with the drunk philosophy videos was the reduction of inhibition. And in most contexts, like alcohol, is leaned on for the reduction of inhibition, right? Like you're at a dance club and you go out dancing and you don't feel self-conscious about dancing. Or you go on a date that you're nervous about and you feel a bit more sociable because of the reduction of inhibition. But I think the point of doing drunk philosophy is that the inhibitions that super academic people have or philosophers have are all like intellectual inhibitions. Like we wouldn't want to say like secretly I'm an error theorist. We wouldn't commit ourselves to the same propositions, right? Like deep down we feel these propositions, but we're hesitant to. So the inhibitions that
I don't think anybody said they were secretly an error theorist.
I think somebody did say they were secretly an error. Am I allowed to still love fake news? Like, is that... Because it's fucking hilarious to me. That was so good. Okay. But the point, like, it's, right, it's an adjective and then a noun. It's drunk philosophy. So what is being removed, what drunk is adding to it is that you have highly academic, highly intelligent people committing themselves to absolutely ridiculous things and then like using all their intellectual prowess to back those things up, or maybe admitting naughty little secrets like that they're an error theorist deep down. And there's nothing untoward about that. That's phenomenal. Maybe we need more of that.
I think that's a good defense of the drunk philosophy. I think that's a good, yeah.
That's the added value.
If there was somebody who was secretly an error theorist, then this is the kind of context in which they would express that. So, and that might be interesting to people.
You get a few gin and lemonades in someone, and maybe they want to tell you a secret about being an error theorist. It's like that's those, because really, like realistically, what inhibitions do you actually have? I know that all of mine are intellectual.
Well, in my case, it's that I'm a lot more diplomatic when I'm sober, I think, than when I'm drunk about various positions. Although having said that, I am also
so the inhibitions are like, I don't want to say something.
Well, I think that there are two things that concern me. Is that number one, I don't want to seem disrespectful of people who are like my epistemic peers, let's say, people who I recognise are also very intelligent and very careful thinkers. I don't just want to come along and just be like, this is stupid. It kind of, I don't know, it makes me feel like a bit of an asshole, and I also don't want to look like I'm stupid. I mean, this is, I think, the main reason, right? Like, the main thing is, I worry that if I just come along and say something like, utilitarianism sucks because of these reasons, and
even though you feel it in your heart of hearts,
I think, okay, I'm probably being stupid here, because if it really did suck that badly, why would these intelligent people be taking it seriously? But
you've got the perfect defense.
if you're drunk, then maybe you can say those things and it doesn't matter. And I think that's why I consider this a valuable
Right?
project.
So stone sober, you have no shyness admitting that like the evil, intelligent characters in Game of Thrones are your favorite characters, like the marauders and rapists and whatnot. Stone sober, you have no problem admitting that like it would be better to be thought a pig fucker than actually be a pig fucker, because you don't particularly care about the opinions of others in regard to whether or not you fuck pigs. However, the thing that really fucks with academics, you've just said it, is being excessively cavalier about something, or just having an informed position that's just dead wrong. Those are inhibitions, right? Like, I don't want to be seen as foolish only in regard to my actual like heart of hearts positions. So drunk philosophy isn't like salacious or things that, because we don't find those things inappropriate stone sober. We're like, well, yeah, we can talk about that. Let's analyze that. We have no inhibitions about that. What we have inhibitions about is being dumb.
Yeah. Well, that is the
or being absolutist.
And I don't know. I think that that's removed when we do this, at least a little bit.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, somebody may or may not have admitted to being secretly an error theorist.
Right. Yeah.
So, come on.
What? What? Give
up the ghost. Just let it go. I've been where you are now, where it's like, you know you're wrong. You know you're wrong, and you know it's just a matter of time.
Well,
it's just a matter of time.
Look, but the other thing here is that if I was an error theorist, there would then be if I was an error theorist, there would then be an additional question, which is, okay, what do I do with moral language? And I'm not going to stop using moral language, so that's going to put me in a position where I'm going to have to reinterpret it, and I would be inclined to reinterpret it on non-cognitivist lines. So all roads lead to non-cognitivism.
You can just have this fun, playful position on language then, where you're like, look, yes, of course, in casual conversation, I say things like, don't kick that puppy, that's fucked up.
I don't care if you kick puppies.
I don't care.
May have a problem with it. I personally, I don't actually give a shit.
I don't really care if you kick puppies either. I would be upset if somebody kicked a kitten, though. Like, kittens are just so...
I like parrots and rats, so leave them alone, but...
I like kittens because they're shitheads. Anyway, and I just have a respect for common shitheads. I mean, I feel like by kicking a cat, you're committing yourself to several other propositions that you probably don't want to be committed to. Which is what we agreed was the value of ethics, pointing out these contradictory positions, which is maybe a proposition such as, like, I am not concerned with the suffering of other entities.
Right. I mean, is that... I mean, because I don't think I am that concerned about... I mean, I wouldn't say I'm concerned about suffering in general, so...
You say that,
I'm not going to kick a cat, personally. Like, I wouldn't do that, but... I wouldn't say that I endorse that particular proposition.
When I explained why I was uncomfortable with being full screen on your channel, you were completely contrite.
Yeah, but that's because I care about you.
That's something other than you.
Specifically you. I wouldn't endorse the general claim that, like, suffering is bad or anything like that. There are certain specific people where, yeah, I take myself to have... And because I'm not an error theorist, right? Because I'm not an error theorist, fake news. I consider myself to have certain moral obligations, and one of those moral obligations is that, you know, I don't want to impose suffering on the people that I'm close to. So,
like, if you were to make that non-arbitrary, though, that would just be something like suffering is not cool.
I don't think that it is arbitrary. And I don't think...
It's arbitrary before you encountered my existence.
Mm. But why are we talking about that? I know you and I care about you, and that's where the moral obligation comes from.
So if I told you a story of something horrible that happened to me in childhood, it would probably make you sad and you would wish that hadn't happened.
Yeah, because I know you now.
But that's just a random byproduct of the fact that we're familiar with each other.
Doesn't I think that, so first of all, I do think that there's a general, my moral perspective is that there's a general obligation, like, not to interfere with other humans. I genuinely don't care about animals in general, right? And I don't think that there is any moral obligation not to interfere with animals in general. But I also think there's an additional, I think you have additional obligations to the people that you care about. And I don't think this is arbitrary, because I would just apply that to everybody. So I'd just say, like, you know, whoever you are, right, the people that you're close to, you know, you ought to act with greater concern for them, let's say. But I'm not sure if I'm putting it in exactly the terms that I would, but it's something like that.
That's what drunk philosophy does.
Yeah.
You might become concerned with anyone.
Yes, you might. Yeah.
That is, whether or not you become concerned with a particular individual is arbitrary.
Sure, but it's not, to say that you have greater obligations to the people you care about, I don't think that's arbitrary. Or at least if you want to call it arbitrary, I just say it doesn't matter.
Is arbitrary.
But I don't think so. If you want to call it arbitrary, I just say, okay, fine. Like, that's a case where arbitrariness isn't a problem.
Why not just extend that to all things that can feel pain?
It isn't arbitrary, because you're talking about the people that I am close to, and it may be the case that
I just randomly messaged you a refutation of an argument you made. That's it. That's it. That could have just as easily not happened.
Sure, and in that world, in the possible world in which you didn't message me, I wouldn't have any kind of obligation to you, any greater obligation to you than I have to any other human being.
I'm not talking about the existence of obligation. I'm talking about your concern. Shouldn't you want to be concerned with even these theoretical entities?
No. Why? Why would I want to be concerned with all human beings?
Because selecting from what is just a product of something like randomness.
But what? So what? I mean, okay. So the fact, I guess you can take a perspective from which the fact that we are friends is random. Even that's kind of difficult, though, because it's friendship often only occurs when people have certain things in common, or when they've got there are certain features that each of them find appealing.
It's a way of valuing.
And so, like, if it had been somebody else who messaged me that same message, I maybe wouldn't have become friends with them, because they wouldn't have had the features that
because the content would have been the same, and the content was good because it was a refutation.
Right.
You said.
But I mean, okay, fine. There is certainly a point of view where
I guess what I'm asking you to do is recognize that there are people who have in their capacities to have sent that email and simply didn't because of no property of themselves.
And I don't care about them, right? Yeah.
Well, I think you should.
Well, but why? I mean, I genuinely don't see why it matters. But that's all I can say about that.
Man, that person who commented on your video saying, like, I should have picked up the ammo clip of an argument, like, has really fucked me up, because now every available argument, like, I let pass through the back of my head. I'm like, oh, son of a bitch, should I give that time? And it's very distracting, because, like, there's also the argument that, like, the same way you derive the value of, like, me, somebody you do by pure happenstance know, it exists in other people so you should extend that to other people.
Yeah, but I don't know them.
Yes,
so
you don't, but it's the same value.
No, because part of why I value you is because I know you.
But also part of the reason you value me is because I am a fucking breathing human being.
Yeah, and I just said that we do have, in my view, obligations to other human beings.
Because it's really simple. It's the idea that like you and I have moral agency because we make moral choices.
Uh-huh.
So our like survival activities, like let's say you decide to rape someone, that is made within a, maybe that was a bad example, that was not nice, but let's say one of us decides to rape someone. As moral agents, we have obligations and entitlements, right?
Yeah.
Like raping someone is
okay.
an obligation. We have an obligation not to rape someone. Whereas moral patiency is to only have entitlements.
Mm-hmm.
And people argue that animals have moral patiency, meaning they can't do anything immoral because they're not moral agents, like they're not making moral decisions, right? But because they have certain capacities that we tend to value, we have moral obligations to them.
Okay, yeah. So
moral entitlements.
I think I'm familiar with this distinction, just in different terms. So I would have heard it as being the distinction between like moral agency and moral status, or moral agency and moral considerability.
Considerability is fine. Yeah, they just call it patiency.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm aware that people make this distinction. Yeah.
Why does that not? Do you not?
No.
I guess you said you don't value a capacity to suffer.
No.
If it's a reaching
part
thing,
of it is this. I think that part of it is
you don't think it would be fucked up to like torture a little animal?
No. Well, I mean, you know, fucked up, but it's also fucked up to like eat mustard and stuff. So I don't care if people do that.
Why is it? Is it fucked up to eat mustard because of like migrant workers and stuff?
No, because mustard tastes gross. Like that's the sense in which I mean it's fucked up.
I mean, I agree. Mustard does taste.
I'm personally not interested in torturing animals, but like I don't have an argument against it.
Would you want to be besties with somebody who wanted to torture animals?
Sorry?
Would you want to be besties with somebody who like routinely tortured animals?
Wouldn't care.
You wouldn't care?
You can do what you want in your own time.
Just reassert that you know someone who kicks animals.
I know someone who kicked animals in the past and has no regrets about it, let's say.
And you're absolutely fine with this person.
Yeah.
See, I feel like you can make several inferences from that about what that person values and not want to be around them.
Okay.
Right? So if this person kicks animals, first of all, I'm wondering why they find this enjoyable. That's weird. Is it just like an enjoyment of power over something that can't help itself? Like that's kind of gross. I don't like that. And additionally, like what I can't understand like what would inspire somebody to want to do that. I can see how they treat things that are weaker than they are. I can see how they value suffering, which is to say, not at all. And yeah, there are a whole host of ways they could value suffering. Like maybe they only value their own suffering, or maybe they value the suffering of only other like self-aware creatures or whatever. But the point is, you can learn a lot about somebody who kicks animals and enjoys it. That isn't necessarily moral, but might make you not want to be friends with that person.
That's perfectly fair enough, and that may well be true. I mean,
like, why would you want to be friends with somebody who, like, a source of enjoyment is strength over something that's weaker than they are, like demonstrably, something that has less power than they do. Like, why? I wouldn't trust that person. Like, what happens when they get more power than me?
I mean, for what it's worth, I've known people that I like who I certainly wouldn't trust with anything. So,
oh, maybe we just have different ways of liking people. I don't know.
I mean,
Yeah,
I agree with your
I
point,
think
right?
that's
Like
really
it
good
can.
stuff, right? It informs other things about that person.
Yeah, that's fair enough, but I don't see that as really being like a moral issue, right? I mean, that's just from my point of view a purely practical issue, insofar as
Well, yeah,
somebody
we're
who
both error theorists,
I'm not an error
Kane.
theorist,
Yes,
insofar
you
as
are.
somebody who acts in these kinds of ways, right? There's like a reliable connection to acting in other kinds of ways that I just don't like. Acting in other kinds of ways that would negatively affect me, right?
That's purely
Um,
behavior.
yeah.
I'm talking about their what they value,
Okay. Well, you
right?
can put the same point in the
He
same way,
tells me
right?
about something
I mean,
about what they value.
so
I don't know. So I
it's
got going
reliably
to
connected to valuing things in a way that I dislike or something along those lines.
yeah,
I mean, either way, to me, this is
or is
practical
disadvantageous.
because
Yeah,
I don't. Look,
I'm
here's the
fine
thing.
admitting it's practical.
The general point is, it doesn't bother me that there are different kinds of people in the world, and there are all sorts of people who have interests that are incompatible with mine that wouldn't make good friends to me. There are many different reasons why that would be, and I just see kicking cats as being like one of them, maybe.
So I had several faces there.
Yeah.
Most of which are gone now because we've had a lot to drink. But one of those things is that somebody who would need to get value, or somebody who would find gratifying hurting something weaker than them, I think that says more than like just about how they might treat me. It does say something about how they might treat me, but it also says something about how their satisfaction is derived. And I think that is, I'll go this far because I'm drunk, and as we discussed, our inhibitions that are gone is that we'll state absolutes. I think somebody who derives significant value from hurting something weaker than them is just a lousy person. Like their interests are never going to overlap with mine. If that's what they feel is necessary to engage in order to achieve satisfaction, I know that they're not actually engaging in anything worthwhile. Because otherwise they'd have better sources of satisfaction.
Maybe, but I mean, I don't know. This doesn't seem. This just. Is this a moral point or like what?
Well, no, again, because we're both fucking error theorists.
Well, stop saying that I'm an error theorist. I'm not an error theorist.
You said you were an error theorist a minute ago.
I do think. I mean, I kind of want some people like this in the world because there are various things that require us to harm animals that I want to continue, such as I certainly.
Why can't you just say that they have better reasons? So what I'm saying is, if somebody harms,
want the animal medical testing to continue.
That's for a different reason.
Yeah, but you know what? I'd rather it be done by people who like hurting animals. Like, if you have a problem with hurting animals, it kind of sucks if you've then got to have a job where you do that. I mean, it would suck for me to have that job because I don't want to go around like injecting rats with toxins and stuff. But if there's somebody who gets pleasure out of doing that, well, great, put them to work there. I mean,
I mean, I'd have issues with their reasons. The reason I'm laughing, and you can use this, is the guy I'm dating, who's now a vegetarian. I didn't argue him into it. He had this really dumb argument that I hear all the time. That's like, no, I went out and I killed that animal. And I felt terrible about it. And it was really brutal, and I understand what goes in to, like, killing an animal. And I made sure I used every part and that I, like, honored it. And I was like, does the fucking deer give a shit? Like, you fucking killed it. Like, that deer is sitting there like, it's totally chill that you murdered the shit out of me because, like, you made, like, lawn ornaments out of my hooves or something.
I do just want to say, just for the record, I personally think that meat eaters have like just the worst arguments of all time. I mean,
They're
almost
so
all of the
fucking
arguments they give a
lousy.
shit. And the only
My
reason why
point
my
was, I
position,
wasn't trying to talk him into being vegetarian.
the
That's
only
important
reason,
to me
just to
that
be
that
clear
be known.
with everybody, the only reason why my position is perfectly reasonable is that I'm willing to endorse conclusions that most people would consider absolutely horrifying. Like that's what enables me to reasonably remain a meat eater.
I mean, I could eat meat because I come to many of those same conclusions. I just choose not to because I look good. But I mean, also because like, if I don't have to hurt something, I'm not going to hurt it. The end. Like that's it, and it absolutely isn't necessary. But the argument was just so dumb, I couldn't help but respond to it and be like, yeah, like the deer gives a shit. Anyway, so he's now a vegetarian, but his undergraduate degree is in biology. So he worked in a lab after undergrad, naturally, like you do. And he's got a lot of amazing stories about this. But we were at a friend's birthday party where I recorded a video of the friend saying he would never eat pork again because they're highly intelligent. Pigs are highly fucking intelligent, and they featured among the things he valued and considered had moral patiency. And he was talking about having a great deal of conflict, and we were very drunk, so I was like, haha, I'm recording you vowing to never eat pork again, just because it's consistent. Whatever. My boyfriend then shares a story with us of these lab chimpanzees that were like super intelligent and arguably like had ethical frameworks, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And I was familiar with that story. He had told me that story before, and it was heartbreaking. But he then told me about how they created new pigs, and apparently the male boar is like 1,000 pounds. Like they're very fucking heavy. That's his number, not mine. But they're gigantic. And the female of the species is quite petite. And like their limbs, I guess, like lock up when they're in coitus.
Yeah.
And unless they're like adequately stimulated, they'll be crushed to death by the male of the species. And I can't imagine this exists in nature, but apparently his job as like a lab tech was fisting pigs so that they would be able to. And you're talking about this and I'm like, I guess it would be better if somebody was like super into fisting pigs.
Exactly. Yeah.
That they do that, but I mean, that's because that element seems relatively intimate, and like it makes no difference. But if our goal is actually if it's not the pig fisting, so they literally don't die during coitus, if it's research, it seems like the personal investment in it might make problematic the research elements. Right? Like if you're like, I just want to kill rats, and you're just like injecting rats with poison, and you're using this job to be able to get your rocks off, injecting rats with poison, it seems like that might fuck with the actual research element of it. If your job is
a good point,
pigs, then
but
yeah, I would rather you enjoy fisting the pigs.
But can't you
which,
make
by
the
the
same?
Way, affirmed was horrifying and why he quit that job.
Can't you make the same point about people who care about animals? Right? Like if you have any if you have a concern for other species and you do not want to impose suffering on other species, then it will interfere with the research. If your research is injecting rats with toxins,
most people who do that kind of work are kind of indifferent.
Right.
So I don't know that I would marry myself to. Sorry, I'm trying to get another beer. I don't know that I would marry myself to the position that I'd rather they enjoy it.
No, I'd rather they enjoy it. I mean, I want people to be careful researchers, but I do think it's possible to enjoy one's, to do research that you enjoy. I think that when you get somebody who's good at a particular like academic job, I think they can kind of compartmentalize and say, well,
good is different to enjoying.
No, but what I mean is somebody who is skilled at a particular academic job, right? And I think it's possible for them to say, okay, yes, this is something I enjoy, but it's also something I'm doing for a particular purpose. One of my favourite things that ever happened while I was teaching is I was doing G.E. Moore's argument about scepticism. Obviously, this wasn't in the moral philosophy course, this was in an earlier course. And I remember somebody asked me a question about it, and I went up on the board, I was writing down, explaining it, and one of the students said, oh, you really like Moore's argument, don't you? And I was like, no, I think it's a terrible argument, but I felt really good because it was like I must have communicated it very, very well.
Some of my students think I love the shit out of Jesus.
Really?
Yeah. I'm like, fuck yeah. I am fair as shit. Like, I do not fuck about with that. Like, I give each side an equal shake. If anything, I disadvantage atheism because I don't feel like it needs any help.
Right.
But I quite like Samuel Barber as a composer. Which I've never mentioned to you because it's kind of antithetical to John Cage. Because it's just like it's so technically good.
I'm going to have a problem with this.
I'm not worried about you fucking judging me. It's just it's never come up in conversation. Right. But
it's not. I mean, in general, when it comes to judging people, right, I'm a complete Philistine. I don't know if you noticed this from the conversation we had before, where I said Steven Moffat is the greatest writer alive right now. Right? Remember when I said that? Like, I know I am a Philistine. I could not forget in some ways
because it's horseshit. I was thinking earlier today, like, man, we should have recorded that because fucking A. Stephen Moffat is the worst TV writer to have ever lived.
Right, Stephen Moffat's a genius and he's right at the top. But that's a Philistine position. I know it's a Philistine position and I don't care.
Also, well, no, more than that, I argued you around to acknowledging that there were several things he just seemed to be incapable of doing, things that we would use as reasonable measures of capacities.
I don't think you did that, but okay.
Short stories.
Well, the problem is this. The question is whether or not artists have to have a broad range. And this is kind of interesting because I've noticed that when it comes to visual art, there's an assumption that an artist only gets mature, like an artist is only a mature artist when they're doing something in a very, very, very narrow range. So Mark Rothko, for instance, like his mature work is... I love Rothko, right?
Have you seen Rothko
fucking
in person?
Adore Rothko, but
they're weirdly good.
I love him. I unfortunately... I know I haven't actually seen it.
Because you've seen... Okay, if you haven't seen a Rothko in person, I know you love Rothko because it looks like shit.
No. You're
just being contrary.
No, I am not just being contrary. I genuinely love Rothko, and although that's not based on having actually seen them in person, I have seen other... Look, I love abstract art. I genuinely love it, and I genuinely find Rothko's paintings just entrancing, right? What was the point I was trying to make?
A mature artist.
Oh yeah, mature artist. So Rothko's a great example of this, right? Like his paintings are all... I don't want to say the same, but you know what I mean. They're in a very, very, very narrow stylistic range. Like you can either... It's not like
he's
Rothko...
mastered a particular thing, and he's leaning into it hard.
He's not simply like an abstract expressionist. Like he's just Rothko, you know. There's a very specific kind of painting that he does, and in general, there seems to be this assumption that visual artists have to have a very narrow range in terms of the style that they do. Now, you compare that to something like acting. One of the criticisms that's made of people like, say, Keanu Reeves, people will say, well, yeah, Keanu Reeves is good in the movies that he does, but he just does the same thing each time. Similarly, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So when actors do a very narrow range, that's considered bad. Actors are expected to do a wide range of different things. With music, it's sort of in between. People want there to be variety in what musicians do, but they don't want them to stray too far outside of their genre. So music is kind of in the middle. And I mean, I find this interesting because my position is, look, all I care about is how much I like this artwork. That's it. I don't care whether it's a wide range or a narrow range or whatever. I absolutely love Keanu Reeves. I love Arnold Schwarzenegger. They're in
You
very
love
narrow
Keanu
range.
Reeves?
Absolutely
Oh
love
man.
Keanu Reeves.
I
And
went to bed last night ranting about how stupid the butterfly effect was and how much it pissed me off. Um, like that film in particular. I'm not going to go after fucking the Matrix series. I'm going after Butterfly Effect, where a fetus strangles itself with its umbilical cord as the conclusion of the film.
okay, I haven't actually seen that film, but you've just sold it to me, so I'm going to watch it at some point.
The end is like a fetus in utero strangling itself with an umbilical cord.
So
highly recommend.
The point I'm making is, so somebody, I mean, take Arnold Schwarzenegger. He is probably my second favourite actor. Very narrow range. Now, Steven Moffat. I wouldn't say Steven Moffat has a very narrow range, but okay, maybe he doesn't do the short stories. I mean, I think some of his episodes have been, like, he has done some single episodes that are self-contained stories, but okay, fair enough. I can agree that if you want somebody who can build a whole world in one single episode and can like have that society and well-developed characters and so on, Russell T Davies probably better at that particular thing. But the problem is this, as I mentioned, if you take all of Steven Moffat's episodes and you take all of Russell T Davies' episodes and I give them scores and I look at the average, Moffat's up here, Davies is here, Moffat's better.
Could you not at least put them on the same plane? I don't know. I feel like you like a lot of the Russell T Davies, but also like, why are we comparing Steven Moffat with just Davies? Like that's not fair.
I'm just going back, just because that was the conversation we had, and they're both Doctor Who showrunners.
They are. You had a whole little rant there, and I think actually I can answer this question. I've been trying to help AJ because apparently architects are actually just artists, not engineers at all. And I thought they had to make things that could actually exist in reality, but apparently no, they leave that to engineers. And I'm like, oh, so you draw the cover of sci-fi novels, like, interesting, I guess. But like you use computer programs to do that. That's you render. That is your career. Wonderful.
I feel like we maybe should have an architect to defend architecture as a discipline based on what you have just said here. I mean, like, is that an accurate description of what architects do?
Holy shit! So my neighbor is like I can see the house, like it's like right there. There are a few feet between our townhouses. He is an engineering professor, and I've seen him go at it with AJ a little bit, and he's like, you guys hand us these things that are like physical impossibilities, and we have to make them happen in reality. And AJ has been like, well, yes. I've gotten off track. Anyway, so upon realizing he was an artist, not an engineer, I was like, well, why is your aesthetic sense such garbage? Because he has no aesthetic sense, and it seems to me if your career is indeed aesthetic, you should have some sort of...
Why do you say he has no aesthetic sense? What's that coming from?
Well, I'm going to borrow... I was listening to one of his online lectures, which I do frequently. Like when I'm doing my nails, I'm doing them in the room, and they take quite some time, and like maybe he's in a class, in which case I listen and learn. A critique of one of his pieces, the end of semester critique, said this, and this is what we were coming toward. One of the signs of a mature artist is that if you remove any one element, the whole thing falls apart. Maybe you wouldn't anticipate that you'd need every element, or maybe an immature artist wouldn't put every element there. But there's no piece that isn't necessary. There's no element that's not necessary to the complete piece. And that critique that somebody else gave, a fellow architect gave it, just like resonated to the core with me as a critique of immature artists in general. which is that it kind of seems motley. It seems like a hodgepodge of things that like they like or they don't like, but it's not cohesive. And you could start removing parts, and it wouldn't actually affect the whole. It wouldn't be a loss. A mature artist creates something from which or for which every part is necessary, and from which no part can be removed without it being at the severe detriment of the piece. So that's why I would say he's a lousy artist. It's motley and non-cohesive. But B, that was the thing I actually wanted to get to with regard to you. So actors, largely they're reciting lines, but if you look at them as a career, you've got big eyes. Why do you have big eyes?
My eyes are fine.
Okay. You said yeah. Either way, anyway, look, you're judging these things differently, and there is one plane on which you could judge them, or one measure by which you could judge them, which is all of this a choice that this artist made that is necessary to the thing they were trying to do?
Yeah.
And not just a random hodgepodge of shit that this person liked that you also happen to like. And Steven Moffat is a random hodgepodge of things that are immature that you just so happen to like. It's not because he is a clear, cohesive artist. I think that same critique applies. I am sorry, that was a rant.
Okay, so you said that I can only have what was the limit here that I can have?
Like a verse. You could have a full verse.
Okay.
You can have a full verse, but from memory. Come on.
Who right? Who is the gaucho amigo? Why is he standing in your spangled leather poncho with the studs that match your eyes? Bodacious cowboys such as your friend will never be welcome here, high in the Custodome, is an amazing lyric. I love that lyric. I absolutely love that lyric.
That is very fun.
I love it because again, it only really works in the context of the whole song, because the song, as I interpret it, is about this guy who is like the manager for some celebrity, and the celebrity is gay. Okay, and bear in mind, this is a song that's it's Steely Dan, so it's like luxurious and sophisticated. Like this, it's yacht rock. It's really really well produced.
Yacht
it's sleek.
I've never heard that, but I enjoy it.
It's like 80s. Okay, it's sleek 80s production, and the lyrics are about this celebrity. So a manager of a celebrity who is gay, and the celebrity's gay, and the celebrity keeps bringing his gay homosexual partner to events, and the manager's getting annoyed because it's like, dude, what are you doing? Right, this is making me look bad. Stop bringing this guy. Stop bringing this guy to our party. So it's like,
and he gives zero fucks.
Who is the gaucho amigo? Why is he standing in your spangled leather poncho with the studs that match your eyes? It's such a I just love the guy standing in a leather poncho with the studs that match your eyes. Bodacious cowboys, such as your friend. Bodacious cowboys. What a brilliant lyric. Bodacious cowboys is brilliant.
Cowboys is good.
Yeah, and so I love Steely Dan because all of their music is like that. It's all got that sort of. There's this wonderful kind of mischievousness, and it's
a bit absurd.
And it's like it's absurd, but So the album Gaucho in particular is just the ultimate example of what I would describe as like sleazy 80s luxury. I mean, the first song on the album, Babylon Sisters, that's about this guy who's like, he keeps seeing these black prostitutes while taking cocaine. And the second song on the album is about this guy who keeps trying to pick up, it's like this old guy who keeps trying to pick up young teenagers by plying them with alcohol and cocaine, with Cuervo Gold and Fine Colombian. Oh man, that's a brilliant lyric. The Cuervo Gold, the Fine Colombian. And the third song, Glamour Profession. Glamour Profession is, I mean, one of my top 10 favourite songs. Glamour Profession is about cocaine dealers in Hollywood, right? This is the
How do you love all these songs about doing loads of drugs and you never do loads of drugs?
Okay, it's such a brilliant album, Gaucho by Steely Dan, and I love all of the lyrics on it. And it's sleazy and it's luxurious and it's so like, it's just so hedonistic, and
I would cite among some of my favorite lyrics, Iggy Pop's "Of course I've had it in the ear before." Like, as if it like is beyond reproach. Like, how could you even ask me if I've been fucked in the ear or had whatever it is? I don't know what the subject of that sentence is, what it refers to, but of course I've had it in the ear before. Like, I've got a lust for life. Yeah. What can I say? Like, obviously, it goes without saying that thing, that absurd activity, I have done it. So I think I like the concision a bit more than you do, because all of mine are like one-liners, like, of course I've had it in the ear before. Which, I like that just in like one line is like arguably one of the most grotesque sentences that could be constructed. And yes, the context absolutely aids it along. But, like, nobody has had any kind of anything in the ear before. Let's be completely honest. That is not a thing that is happening in the world. And yet, Iggy Pop is like, of course, I have had it in the ear before. Like, as if he's confronted with the situation again, and he is indignant at the question. I don't know, man. You ever had it in the ear before? And he's like, of course! Who do you fucking think I am? What do you take me for? So, I am so debauched.
I mean, I don't mean to sort of, like, I don't actually know offhand all of the lyrics to Lust for Life, so I might be misinterpreting this, and I don't mean to ruin this, but having it in the ear just means that somebody's shouting at you. That's a common phrase. I understand
that. No, it's a sex thing in the thing, in the song. Okay. Yeah, it's introduced by, here comes Johnny Yen again with the liquor and drugs.
Yeah,
sex machine.
I'm remembering this now.
He's gonna do another strip tease.
Yeah.
Hey man, where'd you get that lotion? My skin's been itching. I can't remember the next line. With the liquor and drugs and the sex machine. Yeah, anyway, it's like contextually I would say it's not about being shouted at. It's meant to be a, and again, if you remove any one element, if that weren't a common idiom, although I feel the need to point out we could change it to, of course I've had it in the dick before.
Yes. Yeah.
Or of course I've had dick in the ear before. If it weren't a subversion of a common idiom, it wouldn't. I wouldn't find it as powerful. So I always took it to be intentioned as a subversion of an idiom.
I'm gonna try to.
And maybe I'm giving him too much credit.
Next time we talk, I'm gonna actually go away and have a think about this and try to find single line lyrics that I really like, and I'll let you know once I've had a little think about it, because I don't really have any off the top of my head, but
I'm just thinking about how nasty Iggy Pop is.
There's got to be some there. So
with my friend Nick, I was playing music for the first time in our hanging out. I was in control of music when we were driving, and he was like, "Oh, it turns out you have amazing taste in music," and I was like, "No shit, motherfucker! Like, I have the best taste in music." And I played some Iggy Pop, and we were chatting about how wonderful Iggy Pop was. And he was like, is he still alive? I really hope he's not still alive.
I think he is.
He was like, I don't want to think about like an 80-year-old Iggy Pop. And I think that says like everything about what we were talking about earlier, which is like, I have no doubt that Iggy Pop was entirely authentic in just how foul and disgusting he was. Maybe he hammed it up a bit. He was no Gigi Allen, okay?
Yeah.
But if it weren't so authentic, picturing like a 90 or 80-year-old Iggy Pop would not be so horrifying. Because like that guy's sphincter has got to be like the size of these 4 cans put together if he's 90 and alive now. Like that's his rectum. That's it.
Is it? There. I didn't know. Did he do that?
I feel like he did everything.
Okay.
And that's the feel I want from my musicians is you've put 4 beer cans in your asshole at once. I want to know that about you. Just from your music alone. I want it to come through. in your music that you got fucked up and bored one day and you did some shit to yourself that you will continue to write music about for the rest of your natural life. That's what I'm looking for. There are good multiple line lyrics. I regaled AJ with one the other day. I can't remember what I was talking about. We were talking about life expectations or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a sharp declaration, and then I looked to him and I said, I will now recite to you a line from Leonard Cohen before going to bed. And what followed was, I saw a beggar leaning on a wooden crutch, and he cried out to me, "Hey man, you must not ask for so much." And I saw a pretty woman leaning in the darkened door, and she cried out to me, "Hey, why not ask for just a little bit more?" And then I went to bed in my clear statement of ask for a little bit more. Always, why not, right? But those different perspectives, it's fantastic. That song also, so that song is, it contains the line, he has several similes in it where he says, you know, like blah, 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 blah. It's got the like in it.
Yeah.
So he says, like a baby still born, like a beast with its horns, I have torn everyone who reached out to me. And I love that he compares a stillborn baby and a horned beast to some destructive creature that tears everyone who reaches out to them. But he's not wrong.
Well, Leonard Cohen has never really clicked with me. There's a couple of albums by him that I really love, but...
There's a couple of albums by Leonard Cohen that you really love, but he's never clicked for you?
Yeah. So my favourite musicians, I love literally everything by them. I mean, with Bob Dylan, right?
It's weird to love
except like a few
of Cohen albums,
and
not just songs, but like albums.
Yeah, no, I listen to albums. So when I, generally speaking,
likewise.
I will listen to an album, and I'll usually judge it as an album. Now, like, it depends on the context.
Cohen, so no compilations. None of the best stuff.
I'm just talking about albums because generally when an artist produces an album, I think that oftentimes, not always, but often there is a cohesion to it. And
yeah, it's a cohesive piece. I agree completely.
Yeah. So with the artist, when I love an artist, so just to be clear about this, when I love an artist like Frank Zappa, like Bob Dylan, like Steely Dan, I love everything. I love basically everything by them. Right, so the fact that I only love 2 Leonard Cohen albums is kind of a problem because there's all of these other albums that don't mean so
What
much.
do you like? Do you like The Fucking Darkness? Is that the album that you like, or You Want It Darker? Is that the album you like by Leonard Cohen?
Dear Heather is his
like,
best.
You like Dear Heather, really?
Yeah, Dear Heather's a masterpiece.
Is the second best Songs of Love and Hate?
No, it's Death of a Ladies' Man.
Death of a Ladies' Man is amazing. I was about to suggest you listen to Don't Go Home with Your Heart On. And also the finale to that one, which is entitled Death of a Ladies' Man, I Love to Imagine, is about Freddie Mercury.
Okay.
Simply because of the line "working class mustache."
Right.
But also like that, I love that it like aspires to being epic. But I'm not sure there's a better line in all of lyrics than "just like our visit to the moon or to some other star, who'd think it'd leave us so unimpressed, or leave us so unimpressed." And God, I can't remember it anymore.
See, it's hard to remember these damn
No,
things.
I'm very drunk.
I've been drinking too, and it's difficult to remember these lyrics.
Who's also almost shot by Phil Spector. Phil Spector held a gun to his head and said, this was all, apparently the recording of this was, or the audio of this was recorded. Phil Spector held a gun to his head and said, "I love you, man." And Leonard Cohen said, I really sure hope so, Phil. Which is the only thing you can say when somebody has a gun to your head. Sorry, I clearly have a Leonard Cohen thing.
Yeah.
I have a tattoo of his. I have the lyrics to, which is not originally his, but the Partisan tattooed on me. I like Mason. I just don't know how do you like Death of a Ladies Man and then not like the rest of his work, because his work is amazing.
I don't know how to answer
Also,
that.
Dear Heather is a weird choice, but okay.
Well, is it though? Because
what's your favorite track off of Dear Heather?
I don't really have I don't know if I have a favourite track off Dear Heather. If you forced me to choose, maybe I'd say Undertow. I mean, the thing is, Dear Heather is one of these cases where it works as a whole album, and the whole thing, when you listen to the whole thing, it really builds up this mood of it being nocturnal and wintry, and it just makes me feel like things are sort of dark and cold outside, and it has a real atmosphere to it that I don't get so much in his other work, right? But Dear Heather has a real mood, a real atmosphere that I love. And it's kind of, it's also fairly experimental musically. I mean, there's some kind of weird stuff going on there, like, especially on the title track, you can hear it very much. I
don't know that I really liked any song off of Dear Heather.
Let me have a look.
We didn't realize that we both had a deep love of anal cunt, specifically Picnic of Love.
Yeah.
I mean, I might strike people as somebody who enjoys anal cunt, but I don't know that you do. I wouldn't have thought that at all.
I really love anal cunt. I mean, I actually really love them. And not just as a jokey thing, I actually just listen to their music because I think it sounds good. Not so much Picnic of Love, actually, but so
the falsetto doesn't do it for you?
Well, no, not really. But their really early stuff, they did some almost drony doom metal type stuff, and then they went into grindcore, and I really like the early stuff. I also quite like the stuff they're more famous for. But yeah. I don't like grindcore. I mean, so I've flirted with grindcore. I don't like anal cunt, like, musically. It's too, I like it for hilarity. I wouldn't even say shock, because, like, I've listened to punk my whole life. Like, it's not shocking to me. It's just kind of funny. And, well, the thing is, like, really funny sometimes. Yeah, there is a general consensus that anal cunt are just terrible in every way, right? Really terrible musicians, and it is just a shock thing. But I'm just saying, well, look, maybe they have no talent, but the actual sounds they produce are good to me. I can just sit and listen to an anal cunt album and enjoy it. So I'm wondering how many times we can get away with saying anal cunt. Like, is there a limit on YouTube? Oh, that's a good point, yeah. Look, I think it's fine. YouTube has got anal cunt songs. Don't they have a song that's like, yeah, Hitler did nothing wrong? Yeah, Hitler was a sensitive man. Yeah. Okay. No, they have several Hitler ones. They do have several Hitler ones, yeah. I think Hitler was a sensitive man is the most famous. Okay. Yeah. I feel like there's a more apologetic one about Hitler, like, along those lines. Yeah, no, so actually I have something that happened to me today. Well, in the past 2 days. Yeah. I've had 2 separate events, I suppose, both related to our election and my shit posting about our election. Right. Which isn't really shit posting, it's just like I hide behind the idea that it's shit posting. But so yesterday, everybody was very mad at Nevada because we promised the nation, nay, the world, that we would release the vote count Thursday. And then it was Thursday morning, and we all woke up
And we checked the count, and it had not changed. And then, a little while later, on Thursday, it was 1%. They added 1% to the total vote. And then they said, that's all for today. And people were like, what the fuck? How is this happening? What are you doing, Nevada? This is embarrassing. And I loved it. I found it hilarious. So, I have a bit of a following on Facebook, and I just made a post that said, I've never been more happy to be a resident of Nevada than I am right now. Nevada is, and full stop, and then Nevada is currently my spirit animal. Which I knew what I was doing when I said it, like I was being a shithead. And then some guy came along, and I don't know if I knew him or not. He apparently followed me. And without further comment, he linked to this thing that said, why saying spirit animal is cultural appropriation to the natives, right? And I said 2 sentences. I said, first, go fuck yourself. And my second sentence was, I'm a lifelong atheist. Making fun of religion is my culture. Like, I'm not going to not make fun of religion. You can't, I won't make fun of somebody's fucking race. I won't make fun of somebody's wardrobe. I won't make fun of somebody's architecture. I won't make fun of somebody's food or somebody's liquor. I might make fun of my own food, like American food. But also like just Western food in general. Either way, it's at that point, it's a melting pot. It's whatever. But like, I'm not going to make fun of any culture, but I'll be fucking damned if I'm going to stop making fun of religion. It's not going to happen. Are you kidding me? No, it is vile and stupid and insidious, and people cling to it in desperation at the worst of times, and it makes them worse human beings. Insipid nonsense. You can't just label that culture and then expect me to stop making fun of it. And if that's the case, then like, I guess I can only make fun of Islam because I'm an Arab? Like, how the fuck does that work? That's, what? No. Refer to sentence 1. Go fuck yourself. Like, of course I'm making fun of that. I don't believe in spirits. Like, or spirit animal. It pissed me off so much. It made me so angry.
Yeah.
You took my little joke and just destroyed it.
Yeah, okay. Well, that guy... I don't know. I haven't read the article. And so therefore...
I didn't read it either. I've heard of this before.
Well, yeah, I know. I know about cultural appropriation and all of that stuff. At least, at least in this... Oh, no, hang on a minute. No, it's not. I was going to say, at least in this case, you were being... This is a case where you were being critical. It's particularly annoying when people complain about cultural appropriation in contexts where everything is just positive, right?
Where somebody thinks something's dope. Yeah.
If somebody's just like designed a really cool outfit or something, and then they're like, "Oh, that's cultural appropriation because it's based on some Indian designs," or when I said Indian there, I actually had in mind specifically India, as in the country India in Asia. Just to be clear, because some people will be like, whoa, you can't say Indian, it's Native American. I am aware of the nomenclature, it's just that in my head I actually had in mind India.
I figured.
Yeah.
Because you've told me, like, you quite like a fez, don't you?
Yeah.
So that's actually what I was just picturing. And I realize that's a different culture, but that's the direction I went.
When did
I just have a very good memory, Kane.
Talk to you about liking a fez?
Probably like almost a year ago.
Okay, fair enough.
I just don't forget things. It's fine. I mean, I'll forget maybe what you're referencing that we said we'd talk about today, but like if you tell me a fact, it's forever.
I do like fezzes, and I just want to clarify because a lot of people will think, oh yeah, Kane likes Doctor Who. The 11th Doctor had that thing where he was like, fezzes are cool, so Kane likes fezzes on the basis of Doctor Who. Just to clarify, I like fezzes on the basis of the Steely Dan song, The Fez. This was before Doctor Who.
You don't like
Never
fezzes
do
on the
without a
basis
fez
of
on.
You seem so happy. Is that a need to use the bathroom dance, or is that just like
number one? I do
Steely
actually.
Dan dance?
I do need to use the bathroom, but I also was. You made me. You reminded me of Steely Dan and the song. So
It is a groovy song.
that's the yeah. But
do you want to use the restroom, or do you want to continue down this line?
I think that I was making a point about something, which was this: that what I'd had in mind. Oh god, this is such a stupid point because it's so irrelevant, but I have to finish it now that I've started it, and we've gone off on a tangent as well, so we've just spent a long time on this thing that I should have got this out in about 2 seconds. But what I had in mind was, I was going to say, at least you were being, it was a case where you were being critical, right? And I was going to say, the whole cultural appropriation thing is particularly annoying when people use it in context where somebody's created something positive. But hey, that wasn't the case. You were being critical. But then I thought, oh, hang on a minute. Actually, you kind of weren't being critical because you were just making a funny joke. So
Yeah.
that's not really even like who. I mean, as it happens, you do think that religion is bullshit, but you didn't actually say that.
I don't think like Native Americans are bullshit. I think they're human beings and should be respected with dignity and given the same rights as or afforded the same rights as every other fucking human being on the face of the planet.
Do Native Americans actually believe in spirit animals and stuff?
Some
is that like actually a thing?
The concept exists in some native cultures,
right?
But I mean, really, like Christianity, fuck their shit up. Not me making a little joke. But also, I'll make the jokes about Christianity too. Like, it wasn't like, in no way is that statement derisive about Native people. If anything, it's making a little joke about religion, but also about the state of Nevada, which
but it's
I am
not
the
even
only one who says correctly, as would make Hispanic people and natives very happy. Or it should, but it doesn't, because it's all fucking nonsense. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That was a rant. It's just like I should be able to make jokes, especially about the stupidity of religion.
Well, religion is complete horseshit, and it's almost universally morally repugnant. And you know what? Even the cool religions are bullshit as well, like LaVeyan Satanism and stuff like that. They're also bullshit.
That's at best not a religion, or at worst just like a religion based around trolling. Buddhism really pisses me off. People are like, oh, but Buddhism is fine. It's not even really a religion. I'm like, it's a cult of suffering. I'm serious. Like, look at it. It is, and I like Schopenhauer. I know a cult of suffering when I see one. That shit is all about suffering.
Oh, well, I mean, at the very least, on the basis of my understanding, it seems to be a kind of pleasure-denying stance, which I don't like. I mean, they would frame it a little bit differently to the way you did, because I'm pretty sure they would say, well, no, this is about, relieving humanity of suffering. But the way that they do that is by relieving them of everything good.
Well, by recognizing the inherent nature of suffering, right? Like Buddhism, if I had to sum it up in a sentence, would just be life is mostly suffering. Like that, I feel like that's a concise one sentence.
Okay, wait
summary.
a minute. What's wrong with just saying that though?
Because if you assume that is inherently true, it doesn't drive you to improve or to change it. If you accept that as a fact,
it does have a program.
life has been mostly suffering. Fine. Let's change it. Let's do something better about it. But if you have this fatalistic view and you wash your hands of it, life is mostly suffering.
I don't think Buddhists do.
That is. I'm pretty sure. Well, I mean, that's where the self-denial comes in, right? Because that's all there is.
But it's not like they say
it.
they don't just be. They're not just like, oh well, life is suffering. That's it. They're like, hey, desires produce suffering. That we have this flaw in human psychology. Here's what to do about it, and that's where the religion comes in.
And the religion is just self-denial.
Look,
okay, I guess when I say life is mostly suffering, I
do agree with your general point, right?
Most of that suffering could be alleviated, and we should, in fact, desire to alleviate that suffering. And alleviating that suffering in this fatalistic way, where you say, "Oh, well, then I'll just do away with my own desires," is incredibly myopic and fatalistic. I would like to do away with that suffering by trying to feed people and give birth control to young women and teaching literacy and increasing the standard of living for everyone. Like, these are all dope ways to make life less suffering. And I understand that desiring something creates a frustration. Again, I quite like Schopenhauer, but I think by just saying life is mostly suffering and that's a flaw of human psychology, if you want me to add that in, you accept this fatalistic cult of suffering mentality rather than being proactive and trying to change it.
Well,
so I'm Schopenhauer's. He doesn't call us.
That's not why I have a problem
beautiful
with
spirits. It's Nietzsche who calls us beautiful souls, and he does not say that in a flattering way.
So for me,
we're the dumbasses who think we can make it better.
I mean, I should clarify. Look, the reason why I object to religion, again, I suppose I should qualify this because there's an enormous amount of variety in the world, and somebody will probably point out an example of a religion that doesn't have the kind of problems I'm talking about. But it seems to be almost universally something that encourages mob behavior and dogmatic thinking, regardless of what the particular metaphysical or psychological or whatever views are involved in that religion, right? Like, being part of that religion requires this kind of dogmatic adherence to that metaphysics, and it seems like to be almost universally morally repugnant. I mean, Buddhism is, to me, based on my kind of moral stance, right, just disgusting in the things that it promotes. And well, the same again. I'm not picking on the Buddhists. It's true of the Christians and the
Let's pick on the Buddhists.
Muslims, or we can pick on the Buddhists. Yeah.
No, they don't get picked on enough. And after that Sam Harris video, I feel like we should just keep riding that train to the station.
I recall seeing a video where, and I'm about to possibly say something that's false because maybe I had this in a dream or something. I'm sure there's a video where the Dalai Lama was moaning about masturbation and how masturbation is, something that corrupts the body or corrupts the soul or whatever. That's
that I don't commonly watch the Dalai Lama.
Well, I don't either. That's why I'm not sure if this is even true.
That seems like something.
Yeah.
Either way, I mean, it seems in keeping with the self-denial.
Right, exactly.
But more importantly, I know I have definitely seen videos where the Dalai Lama is moaning about not having slaves anymore. So,
Yeah.
Fuck Buddhism. Like, you don't get to have slaves. Like, this also produces a caste system that we should have a huge problem with.
Listen, I want to keep complaining about
I
Buddhists,
see you pee wiggling.
I gotta go to the toilet. This is annoying because I only just went about half an hour ago. I have to go.
Okay, I will go as well.
So look, here's the thing. I really like a lot of shock humour. I like a lot of very offensive humour. I always have. And I've always enjoyed places like 4chan that where people just post the most outrageous and offensive things. There's a big part of me that enjoys that. Now, the thing I was saying to you before was, over the last few years, one of the things that has bothered me about the changing political situation, and I'm well aware that like this is this is such a minor thing, right? But even so, it's something that bothers me, right? Is the fact that we're seeing the emergence of like actual fascism is coming back, and one of the consequences of this is that it's sort of ruined a lot of the shock humour for me, right? It's kind of taken away this thing that I really loved, right? But now there are people who are genuinely awful people, right? Like genuine authoritarians and racists and fascists are using this thing to advance their agenda. And it's frustrating to me that something that I love is kind of being lost, or it's being sullied a little bit, right, by the emergence of this political movement. Because part of the problem is this, right? There's this Sartre quote that people always used to say to me whenever I would talk about offensive humour and defend offensive humour. You could guarantee that people would post this quote from Sartre, and I don't remember the quote, but I do remember the message of it. And the message of the quote was, Nazis will never come out and just say that they're Nazis. They'll always use irony and humour. They'll kind of hide behind this layer of humour, right? Basically what he was saying, although he didn't have the language at the time, is they'll meme, right? They'll be memeing their way into power, right? And when I first encountered this quote, I thought it was a bit ridiculous. I didn't agree with it. But the problem is, I now think he was right. I think that judgment is correct. That is what the Nazis and fascists actually do. So anyway, I love it because I love the just wild and anarchic and outrageous nature that this kind of humour can have. But the problem is, if I encounter somebody online who is saying, Hitler did nothing wrong, and is like,
or trying to name a boat that.
Yeah, outrageous, just outrageous sexist memes or whatever. I don't know whether this person is being wild and anarchic and outrageous, or if they're being an actual fascist who's kind of got this layer of irony, but actually has sincerely awful beliefs. And that has sort of sullied it for me. And this is what I was saying.
I think actually we got into this conversation at the time because I had made, at that point, a comment about criticizing religion, specifically the concept of spirit animals, and how I should be free to do that with satire. This was an earlier conversation. I'm just going to continue doing it. And I genuinely felt bad because it was pretty clear that a lot of people thought I was racist. And when I thought about it, I'm like, okay, other than the fact that I have specified unambiguously that what I'm doing is criticizing religion here, and that all people should be equal, irrespective of gender or race or anything like that, and that is a deeply held belief for me, and we should do everything we can to bring that about. Absent that statement, I would have been indistinguishable from one of these shitheads. And I miss 4chan also. Like the good one, when it was good. And even if I say that, I loved B. I fucking loved it. It was hilarious. There's so much original humor on there.
Yeah.
My first wrinkles are smile lines, and I fully blame B for that because it was so genuinely funny. And it is this flippant, devil-may-care attitude. And you can have that confident swagger that you and I had when we were younger, and that 4chan had when it was younger, because you are confident that nobody could mistake you for being sincere. Because no one would actually take that position. That position is disgusting and terrible, and no one would do that. And they've stolen it. They've stolen it by being shitheads. By like actually believing truly awful shit. I don't get to make jokes now.
Yeah, and it's something that is... I mean, so I should clarify, right? Part of the reason why I don't get to make these jokes anymore is because I live in a fucking shithole country where I could literally get prosecuted for doing it, right? So that's one reason. That's really, really bad and should not be the case. But the other reason is, even if I did not live in a fucking shithole country that, you know, fucking prosecutes people for uploading joke videos where they make their dog into a Nazi, right? Even if I did not live... Actually, it was Scotland that did that. But even if I didn't live in this fucking awful place that you know, has no respect for freedom of speech, I would feel uncomfortable, a little bit uncomfortable making that sort of humour. And I have done before, you know, and this is where the joke bans came in, because I had a joke band that I had with a couple of friends, and we did a lot of offensive stuff. I remember once it wasn't like a band that was at all famous. This was just me and a couple of mates would get together and we would write, rehearse and record an album in the space of a day. So
you should mention what instrument you played.
I played all sorts of stuff, but I played guitar, ukulele, didgeridoo.
There it is.
Yeah. Well, I can still play the didgeridoo. I still have didgeridoos over there.
I just love the idea that you had a band that featured you playing didgeridoo.
This is not music that anyone would be interested in listening to. It was just, we just did it for a bit of fun. But yeah, we were inspired by at least the lyrical themes of Anal Cunt and G.G. Allen, if not the musical style.
At this point, we shared with each other. I also had a band. I don't think you and I talked about this. Do you know about the Yuppie Pricks?
No.
My dreams of satire band fame were crushed by the Yuppie Pricks. But that's beside the point. They're essentially doing this. Great band, actually.
Well, just before you carry on, just before you continue, I do want to clarify. As far as I am concerned, what I was doing with my friends, I don't know if I would call it satire. I think I would just call it just outrageousness without it's chaotic evil, right? To put it in there, it just has no cause, no purpose. It's just
there is no moral alignment.
I don't know. I mean, would you? Maybe you're using the term more broadly than me. I don't see anal cunt as being.
I think that's what's happening. Yeah.
Satire?
Look, satire can be a profoundly pointed criticism, yes. But I also think when you take the words of someone else or the arguments of someone else and deliver them terribly, that constitutes satire.
Okay.
And that's right. That idea.
We didn't conceive of it as being the arguments of someone else. I mean, I guess, yeah. Well, if you're saying like, you know, Hitler did nothing wrong, then somebody would have made that argument. But
but okay, so that idea does exist, right? Like maybe this guy was onto something, right? And by just being a total ass while saying that, you are indeed satirizing that position. It is not, you know, a modest proposal. It's not a brilliant critique in the form of satire, but it's insincere. The things that they are saying are insincere, and maybe the best thing about them to me is that they are. It doesn't have to be against that. It's just by being so wild and so absurd and so obviously not the position these people hold, it does serve as a critique. Mine was. I told you. Do you remember what mine was called?
Oh, you did tell me, but I don't remember.
It was called Bilderberg Group, which I thought was pretty good. Which, yeah, so I would call that satire. What we were doing, like at that point, like we were poor as shit, and obviously not like particularly accepting of conspiracy theories. And by calling our band that, we were engaged in. It's a good ass band name, right?
Yeah.
I think so. For what it was. Anyway, I miss that. Neither one of us would. I'd be mortified if somebody published one of our songs right now. Like, I'd probably lose my job. And not because we were so bad. I mean, we weren't great, but because it's I get it. It's indistinguishable from what these fuckers are saying. Why are you laughing?
I just remembered the name of an anal cunt song, and it made me laugh. That was all. And
what was the name of the song?
I snuck a retard into a sperm bank.
Oh no. Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. My mind is just like creating the entire narrative there and like all the fallout from that. See, that's fucking art.
Yeah.
That is fucking art. That's with a handful of words. You have said something so fucking terrible and preposterous and offensive that nobody could take that seriously. Probably that is still safe. Well, no, we're not supposed to say retard. Rightly so, but maybe that song is still safe. I don't know. We do have another problem in even having this discussion that surprisingly never occurred to me when we were having it the first time.
Yeah.
God damn it, that song name is making me laugh. Which is YouTube. You might live in a shit country, but we've had like many serious conversations about what we can even talk about and upload to YouTube. Oh,
you mean you and me? And
yeah, you and I.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, less of a problem, right? Having one's YouTube channel.
I snuck a retard into a sperm bank.
No, I mean the problem of having one's YouTube channel erased or having a community strike isn't as serious as being prosecuted, but it's still, I think, a pretty serious issue. This. So, I mean, yeah. So I guess I should say YouTube's hate speech policy is extremely broad. It's so broad that there are arguments that it just isn't possible to have. You know, like important arguments about, say, animal rights.
We wanted to talk about Peter Singer, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, it might be maybe one of us should actually bring up what this is if we're going to talk about this. Okay, community guidelines. This is a hate speech policy on YouTube, and I'm not sure exactly what the link is on this, but well, I guess if anybody wants it, I can just send it to them. But yeah, so one of the things that I won't read out the whole thing, obviously, but this is YouTube's hate speech policy. Obviously, that includes things like, you know, you're not allowed to incite hatred against individuals on the basis of age, caste, disability, ethnicity, etc. But other types of content that violate this policy dehumanize individuals or groups by calling them subhuman, comparing them to animals, insects, pests, disease, or any other non-human entity. A little bit further down, claiming that individuals or groups are physically or mentally inferior, deficient, or diseased based on any of the attributes noted above. This includes statements that one group is less than another, calling them less intelligent, less capable, or damaged. Allege the superiority of a group over those with any of the attributes noted above to justify violence, discrimination, segregation, or exclusion. And so these attributes, again, are age, caste, disability, ethnicity, gender identity, nationality, race, immigration status, religion, sex, sexual orientation, victim of major violent event, veteran status. So the point is this.
Veterans are a protected class.
Yeah, there is a very powerful argument for animal rights, which I'm not going to say.
And I can't say it either, even though I am a vegetarian.
Because it would quite clearly violate YouTube's hate speech policy. I would suggest, so in particular, this very famous argument for animal rights would compare some of those groups to animals. I suppose depending on how you take it, it might actually justify certain forms of discrimination against them. Again, we can't go into this in detail, but I'm hoping since people viewing this presumably know philosophy, you know what I'm talking about, right? So this is kind of like, isn't this a problem? I mean, this is okay, fine. YouTube is a private company, and I guess you can say it can do what it wants, but like, that's not where the argument ends, right? I mean, this is a major platform.
What's worse is, so we didn't come upon this easily when we did the live stream. Excuse me. I need some beer. When we did the live stream, it came out that I am a essentially lifelong vegetarian, and you are not. In fact, you would not make those arguments that are best known as made by Peter Singer. And I might want to. But you couldn't even say what those arguments were and that they were wrong. We had to edit that out. That had to be nixed from the video because it silences us in terms of criticism as well. So even though I would love to make the argument on the side of animal rights with regard to how similar their capacity for suffering, etc., is to other entities in the universe, ones that we respect and honor, I cannot make that argument. Nor can you explain the relevant differences between those animals and these entities in the universe, because they no discussion can be had. They've effectively shut down all discussion about animal rights, but worse than that, also about like abortion, right? And euthanasia, not euthanasia in Nazi terms, but physician-assisted suicide. We can't have a conversation about that either. And these are, we can't have a conversation about the terminally ill and what choices should be available to them. It really pissed me off. Like, I was heartbroken.
I mean, I should say, as far as I know, there are people on YouTube who still talk about animal rights and they haven't had their videos taken down.
Oh, but I heard Benatar talking about his antinatalism on YouTube. So I know that can exist.
Look, all it would take is for somebody to put in a complaint about, if we were to make a video like this, somebody could put in a complaint about it, and as far as I'm interpreting this, it would clearly be in violation of those guidelines. So they should, based on those guidelines, take it down. And I guess give me a community strike or whatever. It severely limits the scope of discourse about a lot of really important topics. But
you know what is really funny? It totally leaves room for a band called Anal Cunt having a song called Hitler Did Nothing Wrong, or Hitler was a pretty great guy.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's fine.
Look, let's not give them any more ideas, okay? I don't want them taking down Anal Cunt.
No, we love Anal Cunt. They are clearly not serious. I won't call it satire. They're clearly not sincere.
So, can I just say, for anyone who's unaware of this, Anal Cunt released a promo photo of the band's lead singer, Seth Putnam, This was a promotional photo. They obviously sent it out to various outlets to promote themselves, showing in graphic detail Seth Putnam shooting heroin while getting a blowjob from a prostitute. So this is one reason why I'm pretty confident that they were not sincerely authoritarian fascists. I think it's very unlikely that somebody who releases that kind of material in their promotional as a promotional photo is actually sincere about this stuff. And it's the same with
there's no room for discretion.
Yeah,
Kane.
Well, it's the same with people like say G.G. Allen, right? I mean, yes, he had songs with like horrifyingly sexist, racist, authoritarian themes, but he also did stuff like drink laxatives and take a shit on stage, which probably not going to do if you're genuinely a fascist. So I mean, look, when I say that this kind of humour has been sullied for me, it hasn't been completely ruined, right? Like I'm still capable of making judgments about where somebody is coming from. It's just, if when I look at somebody like G.G. Allen or Anal Cunt, I know exactly where they're coming from. But if I'm just on an anonymous message board, right, and I maybe don't know if somebody's just posted something offensive, I don't know. I don't know anymore. I don't know.
Well, we're both in our own rights content creators, and we like making jokes. And this means putting this art form out into the world, expecting that maybe not everybody will find it funny, right? Because humor is what it is, and you're taking a risk at all times, but at least expecting that people will understand that we are not sincere in these things. Like, I don't actually believe that Nevada, the state of Nevada, is my spirit animal. I in no way actually believe that. And like the transient nature of the claim should make that apparent, right? Like, is currently my spirit animal? Is this something I choose flippantly, or it happens on those terms? Like, it should be obvious to anyone looking at it, but clearly it isn't, and I would love to put that blame on them and be like, oh, you just didn't get the joke. But the brute fact is, these fucking bigots, I don't know, is that a class? Can I say that on YouTube? These fucking bigots have deprived us of our ability to make jokes, and I'm really mad about it. Like, I can't make a harmless little, like, fuck religion joke. I can't do that. No. And not even like malicious toward any group of people, in no way inciting violence. I don't want to do that. The only group of people I might want to incite violence toward is people who incite violence toward other people. Like, that's it. It's unfair for me to put that expectation on my audience at this point. Maybe I can discern, maybe you can discern, but we don't want to make art anymore, which is pretty fucked.
I'm actually really good at these days, because I never even used to respond to comments. When I first started the channel, for about 3 or 4 years, I generally wouldn't even bother responding. I put up the video.
Oh, I'm aware. I totally trolled some of your videos, and you're just like not aware of them at all.
Really? You trolled some of my... I had no idea.
I think it's just one. I think I made a Bentham joke.
Really?
At some point. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm curious. Well, I wonder, was that comment still there, or do you think it was removed?
I mean, there's no reason it'd be removed.
Yeah. What video
I don't know.
did you
There were a few. There were a few. I also corrected you on the gender of a philosopher, because that woman, she's a woman, and you clearly were not aware of that.
Yeah.
So, and you seemed indifferent to that. And I quite like her. I think she's good.
I didn't even see that, because you had to correct me again later in discussion.
Yeah.
I was talking.
I'm aware. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
I know you didn't check your comments.
A.W.
But
Eaton.
so if Annie Eaton is her name now, that's what she publishes as, is Annie. And she clearly identifies as a woman. She does all this feminist philosophy stuff.
I mean, I read the article by an A.W. Eaton, and I assumed it was a man, which is a little bit annoying because I always try to assume that people are women, and I always, when I use the sort of gender neutral term, I use she and her. And the reason why I do this is because it amuses me very much to be able to. What will happen is if you use a gender neutral term and you use she and her, you'll get these like men's rights activists who get pissed off that you're like misusing.
They really?
Yeah. I mean, well, I do. I don't know. Maybe you haven't seen it happen. It's happened a lot to me, right? People will complain about me using she and her as the gender neutral terms, and I mean, I say they're men's rights activists. Maybe they're just very like traditionalist in their views of how the English language should function, or linguistic prescriptivists, but with a very traditional bent or something. But it deeply amuses me to be able to say, no, I'm not a feminist. I just prefer to imagine women because women are hot, right? Which is totally. What the fuck do they say to that? I mean, this is clearly not coming from any kind of standard feminist sort of position, right?
There's this thing in philosophy. You've experienced it, right? There is a push to, in our hypotheticals, use she and her.
Yeah.
Rather than he and him, and whatever, we're diversifying. I have no ideological problem with that. Use whatever fucking pronouns you want. I feel like we should embrace it, but that is a completely other thing. So what ends up happening, and I've seen this happen in philosophy papers, is you have these depictions of women in absolutely absurd situations being profoundly stupid. And I'm like, is this supposed to be helping? Right? She sees a lever, but does she pull it? It's profoundly infantilizing. And I'm like, you're just drawing attention to it. Can we just use it, please, or they, them? That's fine. It's weird that people are so opposed to it. I'm not opposed to it. If people wanted to call me it, that would be fine. This also relates to... You didn't notice this shit.
Yeah.
I did. One of your commenters on that Harris video refused to acknowledge my existence.
Oh, no, I did notice that. And I was going to mention that to you. Yes. And because they did this...
didn't exist.
Yeah. I noticed that. And I remember because we were talking about the whole mansplaining thing. And I wanted to actually bring up this example because I assumed you probably would have noticed this as well, that there was a pretty substantive response to the video, which acted as though it was literally just me. And
they put things that I said in your mouth.
Yeah.
They could not comprehend that I made mouth sounds.
What do you think? Maybe I wrote a script and it was... I gave the script to this actress so that there was a bit of interaction going on.
That is very creative. I didn't think that far into what this situation could be. It was undeniable. This human being did indeed watch a good portion of the video and just refused to acknowledge that I existed as a human being who said words. It wasn't a criticism I can deal with.
Yeah.
But a complete annihilation is genuinely confusing to me because why would a dialogue make sense if you get rid of one person entirely? And then they seem to make it make sense somehow because they put my words in your mouth.
Right.
And that was... I'm in this interesting situation with you and with philosophy where I am definitely not a feminist. But I also feel the need, because there are problems with feminism, but I definitely feel the need to acknowledge that, these things happen. That's a real... You saw it. That was not me making something up.
Look, first of all, there are many different brands of feminism, and many of them have plenty of reasonable things to say, even if
Well,
one may
there's one brand
object.
of utilitarian, or not utilitarian, there's one brand of egalitarianism, and I'm all for it.
Right. Look, it doesn't really matter how terms are defined. I'm pretty sure that per some definitions of the term, you'd probably be classed as some sort of feminist.
There
and
is
so would I.
no kind of feminism that is centered around negative liberty. So
What about
no.
What was her name? There's a libertarian feminist, but
There's no contemporary sort of.
Wendy McElroy.
Yeah, no, I know who that is from like 8 years ago. I don't think I had any problems with her. No, she had some. I know she had some shit that I didn't like, but she essentially she denied. If I'm correct, if I'm recalling correctly, she denied she was a feminist for a long time, and then was just like, "Fine, whatever. I'll take this title and then just go with it." And that just seems expedient to me. So there's a problem.
I mean, that's kind of the view that I have on this one. Like, so there are people who will say, look, if you think that men and women should have equal legal rights, then you're a feminist. Okay, then I'm a feminist. Like, of course.
No, that's literally egalitarianism. And again, it's centered around our definition of like rights and liberty. Yeah. Whether you define those things in negative or positive terms.
Yeah. But every position that I would say I hold, I have a lot of objections to the many of the forms that position has taken, right? I mean, you can't just say, so if one says, I am a libertarian or I am an anarchist, it's not like you agree with
100%
all of the things that have been said.
Why is it a problem that I identify as an egalitarian?
It's not a problem. I
why
don't think
don't
it's
people fucking leave me alone about that? No, I don't identify as a feminist.
The reason why I'm very resistant to identifying as a feminist is, you know what, it's not even so much for my sake. It's more just that the vast majority of feminists that I've interacted with wouldn't want to consider me part of their team, right? So I'm just like, okay, fine, right? I'm not on your team then, right? There are just too many problems that I have.
My feelings as a woman and a human. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
It's more about the way in which this particular movement is manifesting itself at the moment in this particular country.
It's not good. I don't want anything.
There are too many things that I profoundly disagree with. So that's. I think it would just be misleading to call myself a feminist, even if there are some definitions of the term on which I would count as a feminist.
Yeah. No. They are not entitled to me. That's become a very big deal for me. You do not get to avail yourself of every powerful, educated, well-spoken woman, outspoken woman, for that matter, merely because of her gender. You don't get to do that. Sorry, feminism. Fuck off. I am an egalitarian, and an egalitarian I will stay. I will not have my name co-opted like that. I won't have my existence co-opted like that. On virtue of my gender. Gross. Get out of here with that. I don't want it. No, I am an egalitarian, and if you have any respect for me as an actual human being, you will allow that. That being said, mansplaining is a real thing. It's fucking annoying, and it needs to stop, and I'm super glad that somebody created that portmanteau, because it's lovely. It happens on the daily. Like, anytime I say anything.
Okay, so just before we continue with this, I think it would just be worth. Could you explain how you're using the term? Right, like no, not port. I know what that is, and we will assume that the viewers know what that is as well. what exactly is mansplaining?
Well, I'm going to explain the portmanteau first. So you've taken explaining and man, and you've jammed them together whilst removing certain parts of them to create mansplaining.
Hang on a minute. Are you womansplaining portmanteau to me?
No, I am just making sure we have a mutual understanding.
I know what a portmanteau is.
I know you do, but this isn't just for you, Kane. Which you should also know, and I should not need to explain.
Stop womansplaining the meaning of this video to me. Stop.
Again, I said I should not need to, but apparently I do. You have prompted such a reaction in me. Anyway, no, you asked me to fucking explain. Oh, I have two of them for you. Anyway. It's a phenomenon when a woman who is clearly well educated in the subject, arguably better educated in a subject or a field, or even just a circumstance, is pseudo-corrected by a man or has a incredibly basic concept explained to her. And like, I cringe hearing myself say that, because I want to say women do that to each other too. And like, straight up, Kane, I have literally never had a woman do that to me online. I have had them do it to me in person, at which point, like, I just tell them they're being cunts. Like, I'm like, are you, excuse me? What's wrong with you? I have a childhood friend I grew up super poor, and both her parents were university professors. And she likes to womansplain to me, like, social mores. And I'm like, I know I come from a house with no electricity in North Carolina, but like, come on, girl. Like, I operate in this same world you do. Quit it. It's a socioeconomic thing, not a gender thing. But it's very irritating, and she probably wouldn't be in my life if not for the age of our friendship. It's super condescending. So, but online, I've only ever had men do this. So that is called mansplaining. It's very frustrating. And it happened, like, today. It happened enough today that I screenshot my response to one of them and then just posted that image to all the other ones. So I posted
you should. Let's hear the story.
Do you want the story?
I think we should go into the story. Yeah.
Complaining about my Facebook situation.
Well, I mean, look, if it's a really boring story, then I can just edit it out, right?
No, it's like 2 sentences. You can't see that, but
not really. No.
So I posted today. Go with me on this. Full stop. What if ... we just don't have a president? ? And then a series of like little hearts.
Was I mansplaining earlier?
No, I wouldn't hang out with you if you did. It annoys me too much. So it's worth noting, like, I have a graduate degree and I teach critical thinking and I am pretty well educated on politics, and I have to sneeze. Anyway, I also, like, really heavily engage with these ideas. And I just put that out there into the world. Whatever. And no fewer than 10 guys were like, sure, that'd be great, but it'll never happen. Or just, it'll never happen. To which I was like, did you feel, like, you just had to come in here and make sure I knew that this would never happen? Did you think I was of the impression that that was going to be the outcome of this election? That we'd just be like, fuck it. No president. It's done with. Like, there's no fucking way any coherent, intelligent adult could think that that was going to be the outcome. Certainly not a well-educated and very engaged adult human. but no fewer than 5 people consecutively. There were like several of them in a row. I think it was probably closer to 10, but I'm trying to be fair. We're like, let me tell you why that's not going to happen. And I'm like, did I fucking say that? One dumb fuck was like, we can't exist without government for all these reasons. And I was like, motherfucker, did you confuse the presidency with government? Because that's embarrassing. Thank you for writing me 10 paragraphs on why we can't exist without government. But did I fucking say that? No. It's just, so I have this screenshot, or I mean, I also have this like stock response that's like, please don't feel the need to explain the 3 branches of government to me. I did make it past middle school. Like, are you fucking kidding? Can I not make a joke? And like, yes, it was a pointed joke, but that's obviously still a joke. Like, and it leans into several things at once. Things can be more than one thing at a time. So asking, what if we just didn't have a president, can point to the fact that what we're doing right now is absurd. And there are other options out there. And also, we are all very frustrated with this. Nobody is satisfied. Nobody on any side of anything is satisfied. So the system is unsatisfactory. So what if we just start to think about things in a different way? And that's all I was fucking trying to do. Mostly as a joke, where it's like, man, this is a mess. Could we solve it in this one simple way? Which clearly is jocular. But no, instead I get the 3 branches of government explained to me. And like, we're not allowed to not have a president. Like, I'm fucking 5. Are you fucking kidding me? It makes me irate. I don't understand why. Does anybody actually think that women don't understand that?
I genuinely don't know. I don't know what the psychological motivation of it is, but it does seem, from what I've heard, that it happens more to women than it does to men. Online, I'm not sure, because this has definitely happened to me online. I mean, maybe not as much as that, but it's quite common for this sort of thing to occur. The basic
structure of your government hasn't been, like, we have a monarchy, technically, has not been explained to you.
Not that specific example, but in everyday life, I've very rarely had it happen to me.
So
when it happens to me, it's amusing partly because it's so rare, and I can just sort of laugh at the person doing it. If it was a daily thing, or even a weekly thing, it would stop being amusing and start getting a bit tiring, I think. So
that very good friend I mentioned, who quite likes the videos we make together, and you can totally put this online. I don't care if he hears it. He's got a girlfriend who I adore. I think she's wonderful. She asked me to build a bike for her because we've made a little bike gang, like bicycle gang. And I got her a really dope bike. And he asked me to make a bike for him. And then he proceeded to explain to me how to assemble a bike. After asking me to build one for him, he's like, but I can't remember. It had something to do with brakes, where he was like, 75% of the stopping power is in the front brake. Are you sure it's not the front brake that we need for this specific type of bike? And I'm like, do you want to build your own bike, dude? Like, did you came to me to do this for you, and now you're going to explain the nuances of doing it to me? That is insane. He also he really loves philosophy. And I have him take my exams before I give them to my students as kind of my like litmus test. He enjoys it every time. And then he will explain my own like exams to me, where he's like, it's really good that you put this word in here. And I'm like, okay, so I'm taking this as a valuable critique. He's giving me feedback, and I'll be like, yeah, I did that deliberately. And he's like, yeah, but I don't know if you know that without this word. And I'm like, motherfucker, I literally wrote the sentence. Like, yes, he did that. They didn't fucking fall out of the ether. And I love this guy. I adore him. But like, apparently he thinks like I just conjure philosophy
just,
from
I
the
mean,
ether.
okay, so I don't know this guy, so I've not interacted with him, so I really have no basis on which to make a judgment. But part of me is thinking,
It's just all of
is
them.
is this just a case of somebody not really expressing themselves very well? I mean, so when they say, I don't know if you know the reason why you did this, I mean, if I was given an exam
I will
to...
ask him to stop, and I will explain it to him, and then
Yeah.
he will continue.
I
And I will ask him to
that's
stop
very
2 or
weird.
3 more times, and he will continue.
Yeah, that's odd. Because I can imagine somebody getting an exam like this, right, in this context, and wanting to express what they take your motivation in writing it to be, because that might actually be important, because, you know, it might give you some insight on how other people are interpreting the question,
Again,
right?
constructive criticism, I'm totally receptive to.
Yeah.
Right? So I believe the thing, it was a true-false question.
Yeah.
And the question was, critical thinking consists in attacking other people's ideas. And I changed it. I got it from the textbook and I changed it. I added the word only. Critical thinking consists only in attacking other people's ideas.
Yeah.
True or false? Right? So very pointedly put the word only in there. Because, I mean, theoretically, depending on your reading of it, I could see how somebody could say, well, yes, it does indeed consist in attacking other people's ideas. And it doesn't say other people, it says other people's ideas. And that is a large part of critical thinking. Maybe you're not aware of your own critical thinking, or maybe you're completely satisfied with your own positions. You have adequately thought critically about them, right? Like, I've gone through the interpretations of this question. I take my exams very fucking seriously. I adore my students. I don't want to give them a bad shake of it. I also always devote one class session to review of the exam, during which time they can argue for an alternate answer. And if they give me a good argument, they get the points back. Everybody who answered that gets the points back. And this has been through this gauntlet many, many times. And he's like, oh, that one. If you hadn't had that word only in there, it could have been the other one. And I said, yeah, I know. That one actually comes directly from the textbook. It's one of the questions in there. And I added the word only because I can see how on other interpretations, maybe somebody could think that was right, and I wanted there to be no ambiguity. So I thought that adding the word only would do it. And he was like, no, you don't understand. Because it could also mean this and this and that. And I said, yes, I do understand. That's why I added that word. And he was like, no, but you're not getting it. At which point I was like, I love you, baby, but you can go fuck yourself. Like, forever. You're doing the thing right now. Like, is it that inconceivable that I designed a good exam? Like, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't get it. Like, I can describe the phenomenon of mansplaining, but I don't understand what motivates it. Like, what could possibly motivate this guy to keep insisting that I don't understand my own exam questions?
Look, I think that people, a lot of people at least, or maybe, I should say people, maybe this is more just men, but they enjoy being right, and they enjoy explaining their positions, and maybe this is something that happens more to women. It might just be because, look, not all women are like this, obviously, but I have observed when I've seen crowds of people that men just tend to talk more, and they talk loudly, and they tend to be more interruptive, and many women will just sort of go along with that. So if you're the kind of person who likes to exhibit his intelligence by providing explanations for things, you're more likely to be able to do that if it's talking to a woman than talking to a man. So maybe that's why women are on the receiving end of mansplaining more often.
That doesn't, like, I suppose that serves as an explanation, but there should be a problem with that.
Look, I'm not saying this is a justification. I'm just explaining what drives it.
You're doing exactly what I asked for you to do, actually, quite well. Maybe women aren't that irritated by it, but Hey,
you said something to me about relationships, and you said that one of the issues that you found was that guys like it when women kind of you sort of acted it out in the way that the guy would want the woman to act it out, and the woman pretends to be a bit dumb and needs the man to explain something to her.
Yeah,
right?
That is a thing that happens sometimes, I suspect. Yeah, so if you're on like a first date and you're not me, or a woman like me, I've seen women who I know are intelligent do this. Like, I've double dated with them, and they become what I call like passive receivers. Like, and sometimes the dudes will tell them things that are utter bullshit. Like, fuck.
I mean, you're a fairly busy person anyway, so I can believe that.
Where I'm like, I'm an anti-realist, but it's wrong to be mean to cats.
I mean, I'm not an anti-realist, and I don't care if you're mean to. You are an
anti-realist. No,
yeah, I am, aren't I?
You are so used to objecting to being an aerotheorist that you just objected to being an anti-realist. And that's funny to exactly 4 people.